Fantastic. Thank you. Welcome, everyone. Good evening. Good evening. Welcome to tonight's webinar organized by AIM. My name is Yen-Lu Chao. I'm the co-founder of AIM, and it's my great pleasure to host this event for you tonight. We had two very special guests tonight. But before I introduce them, I will first tell you a bit about AIM and what we do. I think most of you know, but let me just do a quick intro anyway. As you all know, AIM is a nonprofit organization with a mission to raise the quality of mentors and set the standard in mentoring, to bring the spotlight to mentoring here in Asia, to elevate mentoring to the forefront while bringing mentoring to all facets of society to impact millions of lives. Last year, in the depth of the pandemic, we launched the United Against COVID-19 UNICO initiative with a coalition of partners to bring the community together to help each other out through a series of masterclass webinars, fireside chats, and by the way, we organized over 60 of those webinars, and mentorship program. We went through 7 cycles involving over 400 mentors and mentees. The community since has grown from strength to strength. This initiative, the UNICO initiative, demonstrated the unifying power of mentoring-driven human connections and care for the human spirit, showing that it is in giving that we receive. So out of this initiative emerged what we call the 5 pillars of mentorship: leadership, entrepreneurship, career resilience, parenting, and personal well-being. And that leads us tonight. I'm very pleased to be launching, together with 2 special guests, the AIM 21 Leadership Series in partnership with Influence Solutions. And we're gonna have 2 sessions tonight. Let me introduce our first keynote speaker. Actually, I don't think he needs any introduction, really, after I saw his resume. MUKUL DEVA. You can read the detail of what his accomplishments are, but let me just quickly say a few things about him. Yeah, MUKUL is an ex-Army officer with a decade of combat experience, a serial entrepreneur, and one of the world's most sought-after executive coaches, professional mentor, and international bestseller with 19 books. 19. MUKUL brings to life a clear, actionable, inspiring examples of how each of us can demonstrate the behaviors required of an inspiring leader and effective manager. He's going to talk to us tonight about the first leader. I'm going to let him explain why that is. How does one lead through disruption? MUKUL, can I have you up here?
Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for taking the time out to be here. And Yen-Lu, I love that introduction. It almost made me fall in love with myself again. And I'm sure that now at least the people in the room will know that I'm not just a pretty face. So it also made me realize something very funny, that when you were talking, I realized that most of us tend to create, the sum total of our lives as simply a list of our achievements. Even though in most cases, most of these achievements are merely a consequence of a series of coincidences, at least in my case. They just happened, as I kind of muddled along through this disruption we call life. Anyway, that's a topic for another talk, another day. Today, let's talk about leading in the age of disruption. Now, we at Influence Solutions are asked to speak on this topic very often, especially in the last year and a half. And that's not surprising, given the severity of the impact of COVID-19 on every aspect of our lives. After all, I'm sure you'll agree that not many of us alive today have seen such a brutal attack on the lower levels of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And I'm not talking just about the basic safety and physiological needs, but also our psychological needs of intimacy, friendships, human interaction, everything has been threatened by this pandemic or endemic. And we at Influence Solutions, we are working with hundreds of leaders from different industries, countries, cultures, levels of leadership. And when the pandemic hit, we noticed three very clear trends of leadership behaviors emerging. Trend number one, some leaders decided to wait for normalcy to return. Now, retrospective wisdom will tell you that this can prove to be a very long and a very costly wait. I mean, we are almost like 1.5 years into the pandemic, and COVID-19 is still as popular as Chinese takeout or roti prata, whatever rocks your boat. Trend number two, there were some leaders who decided that they would stick to their plans and doggedly just keep pushing forward. Now, determination is a very good quality. However, in this particular case, this particular approach is bound to have problems, and it did. And the reason was very, very simple. You cannot play today's game with yesterday's rules. This new reality, which was still emerging and is still emerging, had created a completely different set of completely different playing ground. The rules had to change. So then was the third trend which we observed. Here also the leaders decided to keep moving forward, but they decided to adapt and change the way they were doing so. And it is this third set of leaders and leadership behaviors that I would like to focus on during this talk. Why they did what they did, how they did it. Because there are some beautiful and very actionable insights into this, which we can all take home to lead ourselves or our teams better in times of disruption. And I must also mention, there was another very strange coincidence which happened here. This third set of leadership behaviors is something which we at Influence Solutions had been researching for almost a decade. We were very alive to the fact that disruption is a way of life. So it's not leading in times of disruption. Leading per se at any time involves navigating through many unknown, small, big things which come along. So we had been researching it. And over a period of like almost a decade, we had identified and codified these behaviors into what we call the first framework. And the reason we call it the first framework is because these behaviors help us to become first and help us to drive our organizations towards that. First being future ready, innovative, relevant, strategic, and trusted. This framework has become so popular now that it kind of forms the bedrock of leadership training for dozens of global multinationals across the world. However, more about that at another time. Today, I wanted to ask you a very simple question, each one of you in the audience. In the last 1.5 years, which type of leadership behavior have you seen the most of? Trend 1, trend 2, or trend 3? Just take a moment, write it down in chat. I'm sure the answer will be very eye-opening for everyone in this room. So coming back to the third set of leadership behaviors, this trend number 3, before I go into it, because leadership can be a very heavy and a very daunting word, I'm going to invite you to think, what would change for you if you saw leadership simply as a function of intention, common sense, and clarity? Okay, now, instead of questioning the definition, I'm going to share with you how disruption impacted leadership in this context. So you will agree that intention of leadership will never change. Disruption, no disruption, it doesn't matter. The intention of leadership will always be to ensure that the people we lead are clear about the goal, they enjoy the journey on the way to reaching the goal, and they learn along the way. So that doesn't change. Common sense. This one I think I will leave because it's a kind of a divine privilege. So I'm not going to touch upon it. Suffice it to say that all of us have our Dilbert moments, and smart people are those who learn to minimize these moments. So let's talk about clarity. This, after all, was the biggest casualty of disruption. Now, as it happens in every disruption, there was a massive overload of information coming at us from a dozen different directions, from unverified, contradictory. It created tremendous noise. And what it did was that it literally magnified a problem which all of us already suffer from, which is fear of failure. This fear of failure became so massive that it literally can freeze individuals and organizations. So what is the solution? And the solution is what was demonstrated by this third set of leaders and the third trend which we had noticed. This third set of leaders, they decided to do what all of us are taught to do during combat. Now, I've had the misfortune of spending almost 11 years in hard combat, and I can tell you what the process we adopt. Combat is a very disruptive experience, There is, just to survive in that din and chaos of combat, most successful combat leaders adopt this simple approach. They decide to move forward. They keep the strategic goal very clear in the mind, but they move forward in shorter and more intermediate goals. It's kind of like, imagine you're driving through fog and your visibility is down to like 10 meters. Now, does it make sense in this situation to plan 50 meters ahead? Obviously not. So what do smart people do? They will continue inching along, and as they move a yard, another yard becomes clearer in front of them. So this way, they will make sure that they continue moving, continue adapting to whatever reality comes up in front of them. And just by doing this, they are able to ensure that they stay, if not ahead of the curve, at least with the curve. So this kind of reminds me of a particular phase in my life where I had to adopt this. This is, other than combat, the first major disruption I faced in my life is when I quit the army. This was like in the mid-90s. I quit the army. I had just gone through a divorce, and I was a single parent, and my daughters were like 4 and 8. So here I was learning to be, I just come out of combat, right? And in combat, you don't really require too much of empathy. So I had kind of tamped it down for almost a decade. Now here I am learning to be mom and dad to 2 young girls with a new business which had taken off really well, and dealing with my emotional issues, their issues, lots of stuff happening. And at that point in time, just when things looked like they were about to get better, along came the Asian financial crisis. Now today I can look back at those years and kind of take it with a smile, but I can tell you that at that time, things got pretty dark, pretty bleak, pretty quickly. And one day, things had gotten so bad that I had literally run out of options. I mean, I was a first-generation businessman. I did not have money in the bank. I could not withstand a financial hit beyond a very short period of time. Fledgling business, lots of emotional issues, all of us carry a lot of baggage. I carry a little more than normal. And one night, I actually sat down to kind of reflect about what the hell was I supposed to be doing, because I was completely stuck. There was not a single data point which I could fix down and use to pivot things around. Finally, I decided that there was nothing in my control. So the only thing I could control was that I would do 2 things. I would continue moving forward as slowly as I could, but I would continue moving forward towards my ultimate goal. And secondly, I decided that no matter what life threw my way, I would be confident that I would handle it confidently. Did it all work out in the end? Well, as long as you believe in yourself and you keep moving, things generally do. Because much later, when I used to talk to my core team of managers, and they would share with me about that time, that they saw me always upbeat and calm and collected. So they assumed that I had a plan. They assumed that I had a handle on things. And because of that, they stayed solutions focused and positive. So even when that doesn't solve the problem, it helps you to address the problem with high morale and in a more purposeful manner. And purposeful mindful action is the bedrock of resilience. So I mean, I would love to go deeper into this. I love talking about myself, as I think you might have noticed. But I'm also very mindful of the time, and I don't want Yenlu or someone else to be holding up a card and saying my time is up. That's not a good thought. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to conclude this talk by sharing with you the 6 things which stood out in the Trend 3 behaviors. And these things are relevant because they can help you to lead yourself and your teams very purposefully. The first is empathy. Empathy is a great leadership quality in any situation. In disruption, when fear and anxiety is high, it's even more useful. The second is people development. Again, very important in every situation, but in this particular situation where people need to be able to function independently without falling back on you, it requires an added dimension. Thirdly, to make this ability to function independently more robust, contingency planning. This also allows us to move very quickly and seize emerging opportunities and adapt to upcoming challenges. Number 4 is that when the playing field changes, we need to have a new way to support, manage, and appraise performance. Just to give you an idea, in the first 6 months of the pandemic, Influence Solutions worked with over 30 companies, intact teams, helping leaders and led evolve this new way of supporting, measuring, and managing performance. Number 5 is to ensure that you have shorter and a larger number of intermediate goals. This is very critical. It enables you to stay grounded to your ultimate goal. And the last is the importance of maintaining reserves, professionally and personally. Reserves in terms of time, any energy, money, everything, mental ability. Now, it is this ability to maintain reserves which enables you to move quickly when the right opportunity comes. So these are the 6 things I wanted to leave you with. And I'm aware that there is a Q&A after this, but if anyone has a burning question, I would be happy to take one question, and then I'm happy to do the rest after the final session. So anyone, any question? See, I like this audience already. It's nice not to ask very difficult questions and give me a hard time. Right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to end by asking you to think, whether you're leading a team or yourself, what are the 1 or 2 things out of these 6 that you believe you need to do more of? And one last thing I want to share with you. This is a question I am asked very often. What is it that the army taught me that is useful in other fields of my life, other areas of civilian life? And there were 3 things I learned: focus, flexibility, and discipline. Focus enables you to keep your eye on the long-term goal. Make sure you don't sway. Flexibility allows you to adapt to whatever life throws at your way, but keep moving towards the long-term goal. And discipline is the super glue. If you have discipline, you will have routine. If you have routine, you do not need motivation or anything else. Routine is the bedrock of resilience. It keeps you moving very, very quickly. So with that, I would like to thank you so much. You've been a wonderful audience for not asking difficult questions. Have a great session ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Mukul. Thank you so much. Your story, thank you for sharing your personal story. That's very powerful. It really resonated with me. I didn't go through 11 years in the Indian Army, or any army for that matter. But of course, I also went through my own life challenges, and I can really relate to some of the things that you said. I mean, my takeaways are, and empathy for me are, focus, flexibility, clarity. Those are some of the things I took away from some of the insights I took away from your talk. Thank you so much. I'm sure we're gonna have plenty of questions at the end. So please reserve your questions if you haven't asked them already. to MUKUL. Toward the end, we're going to have an open panel session where we address all the questions. And by the way, do typing your questions into the Q&A section of the Zoom chat. Okay, thank you so much. Thank you, MUKUL. Okay, next up, I'd like to introduce our next guest speaker, a very special person also. In fact, I met both of them recently, MUKUL and Georgette. I must tell you, I fall in love with both of them. And we had such a good chat. And I haven't met in person yet. I would love to meet them, you know, hopefully soon, as things are opening up. But let me introduce Georgette. Yeah, she is the president of United Women Singapore. It's an NGO advocating gender equality, women's empowerment that's focused on building the pipeline of future female leaders. How important is that, to have a pipeline of future female leaders? We can use them now. Let me tell you. I mean, for me, you know, the pandemic last year, I remember the death pandemic, they were showing how well the different countries, I always talk about this, the different country, nations, how well they were dealing with the pandemic and how badly some of them were dealing with it, okay? And guess what? All the countries that were dealing with it very poorly, that's including the US, this is next 2020, UK, of course, and some of the other some of the European countries. Guess what? And some of they were all led by men. All the leaders of those countries were men. Whereas some of the countries that were doing very well, comparatively speaking, Germany, New Zealand, Taiwan was doing very well at the time. All these had female leaders. What does that tell you? What does that tell you? I think that spoke volumes, isn't it? And there is no bigger disruption than the pandemic. And this is where leadership can really show. Okay, let me continue my introduction. Sorry about that. So prior to this role with United Women Singapore, she was the senior VP of communication, heading up communication CSR at MasterCard Asia Pacific. Her career included other, you know, both in private and public sectors in Singapore and in the region, Hong Kong as well, CNBC, Dow Jones, Trade Council Development, Tourism Board, and Sentosa. She currently also sits on the board of Board Gender, an initiative of the Singapore Council of Women organization, focused on increasing the number of women on boards, and also on the task force on family violence. Yeah, jointly led by the MSF here in Singapore. I think, you know, I think there's no more important work than that of trying to bring more women leadership to the fore, right? So that more women can have the opportunity to lead. And, you know, when given the opportunity, they do very, very well. So what we're gonna do here, I'm gonna introduce, so Georgette, I'm gonna introduce you to come on stage.
Thank you.
Yeah, come on stage here, and we're gonna have just a little fireside chat.
Absolutely.
Two of us, yeah?
Thank you for the introduction. But of course, you know, coming after MUKUL, I have, like, you know, big shoes to fill, right?
Yes, but you have big shoes yourself. So, I mean, you know, not in a literal way. But, you know, let me just, tell us a bit about, I mean, you have obviously a very impressive credential and your experiences across, you know, public and private and now the NGO sector. Tell us about your journey so far, you know, and also, you know, I mean, also times has changed, right? And during what happened in the past year and a half. So what have you seen? What did your journey have been?
Oh, well, thank you for this. And thank you for this opportunity. Such a treat to be able to be with you this evening and to address what a fantastic audience here. My journey has been certainly a varied one. And I actually sincerely believe that all my roles, the different locations, the territories, and the different jobs that I've had, the career path that I've had, have all been building up to what I do today, is to prepare me for just this. So, you know, when Mukul talked about discipline, he talked about flexibility, focus, all those things I had to learn in some instances the hard way in the various roles that I had. Both in the, you know, the public sector as well as the private sector, the corporate sector, because, you know, the NGO space is not an easy one, but it is one of purpose. And that's what drives me to get out of bed every morning. This is exactly what I want to do and where I want to be. So I thank all the teams that I worked with, my employers in the past, for helping me get to where I am today. But nothing prepared me, or for that matter, pretty much everybody around. We were not prepared for what happened last year. And you know, I think it took everybody by storm. Coupled with the fact that we as United Women Singapore had just done a complete rebrand and renaming of ourselves. Even though we'd had over a 20-year legacy in Singapore, we were a new entity in that our focus was just on Singapore, not around the region, a complete rebrand, everything. So it was like starting a business of my own. My daughter actually said that, you know, what I went through was that of a founder, dealing with every aspect of an operation and an enterprise. So it was a painful journey, but nonetheless a very useful one. You know, you dig down deep, right? That's what leadership is all about. You dig down deep, and you know that there are people that depend on you, and you have to put them first. You know, and that's the normal reaction to do. But I want to say that while that's what we all do very easily, I think it's really, really important that we also focus on the self. The understanding of the self, understanding what we can and cannot do, which includes, in some instances, our own limitations, and the ability to reach out to people because of that. And then self-care. Because if we don't take care of ourselves, then how can we possibly take care of the people around us that we actually, you know, value and care for? So the pandemic certainly, 2020, all of 2020, left a really lasting impression on all of us. Lots of learnings to be had. And I think years from now, we'll all sit around and have lots of war stories to tell because of it.
Great, thank you for that. Thank you for that. You know, you talk about leaders need to put people first. Simon Sinek talks about leaders eat last.
Yes.
Yes. They eat last.
Yes.
Putting your people eat first. So it's you know, nowhere.
And that was a military scenario too.
Yeah,
wasn't it,
yes.
if I'm not mistaken. Yes.
Yes, it was. He used that example a lot, being, you know, talking to the military people, what they do, what the leaders there do.
That's right.
They always put of course, they're all about, you know, taking care of people around you, isn't it? And that's why they have engendered such trust and loyalty.
So let me answer Mukul's question earlier, because he asked, you know, which we would pick from what type of leadership we saw through the pandemic. And I'm not sure if this one fits per se into the framework that he gave, but I saw servant leadership come through really, really strongly. Certainly in the fields that I encountered, the people that I encountered, people were just stepping up. And people were, you know, the whole concept of servant leadership, putting others before themselves, making sure that others were satisfied first, very often to their own detriment, right? The individual himself or herself. So I saw servant leadership as really coming and bubbling up right across Singapore, but across the region too.
Yeah, excellent. Because I personally really subscribe to the idea of servant leadership. You're the steward, isn't it? So
Absolutely.
It's not your pyramid, definitely not. But it's more the inverted pyramid, isn't it? The leader is supporting, serving the organization.
Correct.
Yeah, that's a great. Thank you for bringing that up. That's a great example of the kind of leadership that needs to happen during this time of disruption. You know, because everybody has gone through a lot of stress. There's so much uncertainty. Now, can I just, okay, so I'm gonna ask you this question, and maybe you have addressed it already. How does one stay strong, the leader especially, stay strong under fire?
Oh,
and
that's a good one.
Yeah, become even more resilient in such uncertain times. It's certainly been a very uncertain time.
I can answer that in a variety of ways. I think obviously there are, all your leadership articles tell you what to be looking out for, what you should be doing, and such. But let me frame it in, and I think I mentioned this to you the last time we spoke. I have a 5-point S guide, which I think actually, is applicable here too, right? Because it's about how you adapt and how you survive. So the first S is seek. You're constantly seeking knowledge. You have this insatiable appetite for knowledge and learning, because that's what keeps you agile. That's what keeps you flexible and on top of things. The second S is support. Now, here it's two-way. It's support for other people. You be the support, but also reach out and support others, right? Because there will be a lot of people that need your support. But don't be afraid to ask for support. I think that's critical too. And even leaders have to ask for support. They have to ask for others who maybe know better than they do. The third one is share. So share here, similar to support, is two-way. It's you share all the good times, the good pieces of news, but you also share during the bad times. And again, particularly relevant during difficult times, times of disruption, times when you need to be resilient. And that actually helps you to be resilient because it helps you to bounce back. The fourth S is self. So I alluded to this a little bit earlier on. It's self-care. You have to be selfish. Let's put it that way. And that almost goes counter to the concept of a leader. Leaders are usually not selfish, but I think you have to be a little bit selfish. You have to take care of yourself so that you can then do a really bang-up job of taking care of others. And that's what makes you a good leader. That's what gets you resilient, that bounces back and wins the trust of people, very importantly too. And my fifth S relates to the personal, and that is sleep. Okay, the restorative powers of sleep. Very often that's one of the first things to go during times of upheaval and disruption. And you think you have to work 24 hours a day, but believe me, I struggled many years in corporate life with just a few hours of sleep. And now I am a staunch believer in the powers of good sleep. It helps you to think clearly. So going back to the point that Mukul mentioned, the clarity, right? Clarity in decision making, clarity in all those aspects, whether it's people development, all those areas, planning. That clarity comes when you've had good sleep. So that's some of my 5-point S-point guide, which hopefully actually gives you a little bit it answers a little bit of the question that you asked earlier.
Yes, thank you for the 5S. Very valuable. But what came up for me as you were talking, is that the two words. One is vulnerability and humility. When we go out and talk about support, not only providing support, but asking for support. Absolutely. You have to have a sense of vulnerability and humility to know that you need support, you need help, right? And no one is an island. No one can do everything, especially leaders that they have so much responsibility because of the people under their care.
And the really smart leaders, the ones who plan in advance, know when to be able to reap and harvest the various skills that their teams bring. right? And how best to cultivate them, to nurture the people. So again, to the point that Mukul said, people development.
Yeah.
And that takes place all the time, not just at the point of, disruption. You've got to be doing constantly so that when it comes to the point of a crisis, whether it's a pandemic or, a moment in time, people are ready, people have been developed to respond and react in exactly the way that's needed.
Absolutely. To me, I think that the more I think about it, I think, humility goes together with people development. I mean, level 5 leadership, good to great, talk about humility and professional well as two of the outstanding traits of the level 5 leader, right? And meaning that having humility, being humble just means that first of all, that you don't have all the answers, and that you will count on other people. Allow them to rise, right, and allow them to be, be leaders themselves in the right situation.
And adjacent to humility is human too, right? From a similar root, I think, being human. So to this point again of asking for help, admitting that you don't have all the answers, admitting that sometimes you're tired and you need, support. That's being human.
I mean, asking for help or asking, going around the room for asking for people's opinion, asking for their advice is actually a form of people development. Right? People feel like they're heard, they're contributing. I think that's very, I think that's it's not, so it's not just about being humble, isn't it? It's also part of people development strategy. Let's go back to self-care, Georgette. I'm big on self-care because of the work I do in mental wellness.
Sure.
I just came across this quote recently. I want to share with you and everyone. It really kind of, wow, it hits me. It says self-care is not, self-care allows us to show up and give the best of us, not the rest, not what's left of us. So self-care allows us to give the best of us, and rather than what's left of us. So that really said, wow, yes, that's in order to be able to fulfill, right? What do we do? What our role, our leadership role is that says a lot.
Absolutely, this is very true. That's right. But you have to be able to recognize what you also need. All right. You can't be running on fumes. You can probably do it for a little while, but not over an extended period of time. And then it becomes counterproductive. And then you're actually acting to the detriment of everybody around you. So you've got to recognize when you need to stop, take a breath, take a breather, ask for help, right? And take care of yourself. And I think, and again, like this whole point of people development, you need to be doing it constantly. You can't sort of say, I'll only do it at a point when, I'm about to break down. You've got to be doing it all the time.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, it has to be a habit, isn't it? Something we do almost on a day-to-day basis.
Correct.
Sleep, exercise, whatever we do. Fantastic. Okay, I'm going to ask you one more question. I'm going to bring Mukul back. Yeah, Mukul back. Yeah, okay. So, maybe you already answered this. We already talked about this. What leadership style? There are many styles of leadership. Yeah. What style do you think is best suited in this age of disruption? And please chime in, Mukul, too. we have a bunch of questions that come up.
I thought you were not supposed to ask me hard questions. They were for Georgette.
Oh, wait, I get to ask you hard questions. Come on. What's
She's
the
only
fun in
one.
that? Yes.
Okay, so firstly, before I answer that, Yendu, I'd like to say that I'm a school dropout. I do not do very well with theoretical concepts of leadership. What I do believe is that if a leader demonstrates pretty much the 6 things I talked about, that style of leadership, whatever title you give to it, would work very well. We need to understand that the people we lead, we are responsible for their development and helping them to grow. So it's a fascinating story, I'll tell you. In time, about 328 BC, Alexander the Great's father set up a leadership academy, Philip of Macedonia. And over a 10-year period, they carried out a research as to what keeps a person engaged and motivated in battle. And they came up with 2 words. Very recently, Google also carried out a very extensive research on what keeps a person engaged. They came up with 2 words. The words were the same: respect and the opportunity to learn and grow. So as a leader, if I can create the conducive environment where people are clear about the goal, they enjoy the journey along the way, and they are learning, now whatever you call that leadership style, that would pretty much work.
Yeah, fantastic.
I'm
Yeah,
in
yes.
total agreement with that. I think, again, respect and trust, I think, sometimes are used interchangeably, or at least in the same environment. But I think, that the trust is so important, and nothing brings out trust, the need for trust, more than at a time of crisis, right? And I think, what you're saying is the opportunity to grow, the nurturing part, all right, taking the effort, the time to engage, and I think it was raised earlier about empathy, right? Giving access to people, and making everybody feel like they belong, and that they are important, and that they are valued, right? I think also transparency and honesty are all those traits are very, very important, because that's what's needed to get people through the tough times. Those difficult conversations need to be had also. People may not like the not so great news, the negative news, but at the end of the day, they will respect and appreciate the honesty and the transparency with which the news was delivered.
Yeah.
Absolutely, Georgette. That is true of parenting. It is true of leadership. It's true of pretty much every situation.
Correct.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. And of course, Simon, going back to Simon again, Simon Sinek, he talks about leaders are like parents. Yeah, in many respects. You mentioned trust is very important. I was going to ask you, how do we build trust? But I think you answered it. You answered already. We build trust by being transparent. We build trust by being honest. And those are the things that we build trust by making people feel like they're heard, that they're contributing. Right? Those are, that they're growing, they're learning, and those are the things that all contribute, I believe, to trust, which is, again, very important, and I think often quite lacking, to be honest, quite lacking. And unfortunately, that's the sad truth.
And to a degree, admitting failure. All right. If things aren't going right, and you recognize that you've messed up, owning up to it, I think also is definitely a way for on the pathway of winning trust overall.
Yes, and again, for me, that relates to vulnerability also, isn't it? Yeah, showing that we're all human. We can we can also, even as leaders, we can make mistakes, and allow people to do the same. I feel like they can show their vulnerability, and they can they feel like, sense of self-compassion. I'm going to ask one more question, a very tough one for both of you, and then we're going to start addressing some of the questions coming in from there are a bunch of questions have come in now, but I'm going to ask one more. Okay, we are. I mean, today's topic is about leading through the age of disruption, isn't it? I don't think there's any bigger disruption than what we're going through now. We're in the middle of a triple whammy. And let me tell you what those are. One is, of course, the pandemic, huge, right? And last 18 months already and still going. We don't know how this thing's gonna go. We don't know the end. Although it's getting better, with the vaccine, but we don't know, right? We just don't know. Number two, technology, big technology disruption. They're saying by McKinsey is a study saying that by 2025, 50%, is it 2025? That's soon. Yeah, I think that's what 50% of the job function will be replaced by AI or machine or computer. 50%, not jobs, but job functions, tasks, which could be parts of a job, but not, So not 50% of people will be out of job. That's not what they're saying. Of course, but people need to go through a lot of retraining, upskilling, right? That's the big thing. And number 3 is, of course, climate change, which is now hitting us in the face like no tomorrow. That would, you know, I know some of us are wondering whether we're gonna still be around in another 50 years, you know? So this is that age of disruption, the triple. What can leaders do? What kind of leaders do we need? Is there any more things to add to what we just talked about in this kind of, my gosh, you know, we hit this with this huge disruption, a wave of forces of disruption. Mukul?
So before I answer that, can I ask you, Ian, can you think back at any point in your life when things were not changing? They've been changing always. Technology 20 years back was very different from what it was 10 years back. And so the pace of change may have accelerated. But for me personally, I do not remember a single period in my life when things remain consistent, which is why we actually in our company, we have a different name for disruption. We call it life. It's happening all around us all the time, and you need to kind of make yourself weatherproof.
Yeah. Yes.
Right? And probably I think the 6 things at least which I talked about and the 5 S's which Georgette talked about pretty much sum it up. You know, if you pull it together in any shape or form, different degrees, different styles of leadership, different levels of leadership, different industries, pull it together, you pretty much have a decent package there of how you can not just flourish yourself, but help your team to flourish.
Yes, I guess talk about change. Yes, you're right. I mean, change always been there. I think it's just the scope of things. It's just,
I mean, yeah,
the scale and the scope and
the scale, the scope, the pace of which, and I think it's the confluence of everything coming together in the way it's coming together. I mean, you know, it's going to be like deep impact, right? that's really what we're looking at. I think we have raised all those points. I think having a positive outlook helps. Right? It's not the end all to it. It's not going to be the ultimate, but I think having a positive outlook and maintaining a positive outlook helps, because it builds again a sense of trust and security for the people around you. It also keeps you going and fuels you to carry on. So I think having that, I'm almost tempted to say you also need to keep a sense of humor, right? Because in the hardest of times, you need to be able to occasionally lighten up, because you know, you have to. Otherwise, it will break down. So I think there is a sense that you need to be able to see gratitude. That's the other thing, to be able to be grateful and see what's around you and appreciate the smaller things as and when they happen, so that, you know, when life does happen, disruption, life, all those things happen, you can put things into perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thank you for that. Hope and optimism. And humor. Humor is underrated, I think. Humor is underrated, yeah.
And I don't mean to sound flippant.
Yeah.
But you know, I think it is necessary.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
In fact, for me, that's my primary go-to resource when I need to bounce back. It's a sense of humor, very important.
Yeah.
If we may add, you know, as leaders, right, or even as parents, I think it's time for us to start being giving a little tough love to people also, because resilience seems to be dropping. Like, I mean, there's no bottom to it.
Yeah.
You know, just to give you an example, right? Alexander the Great was 33. His senior most bodyguard was 65. The guy used to carry a 12-kilo sword into battle at 65. So there's a kind of mental toughness which comes into the game, not just physical toughness. It all begins here, and it seems to be falling, right? So in the olden days, when you were a soldier, you retired from soldiering and went to farming, which is you went from a hard life to a hard life.
Yes. So, yeah, especially
because I work across different countries. I notice a huge difference in, so I do a lot of capacity building in war-torn areas like Iraq and Afghanistan. And I notice a huge difference in a 25-year-old there and a 25-year-old in anywhere in the first world.
Yes.
The primary difference is
I think the environment plays a huge role. You know, I think it's the environment that we grow up in. Absolutely, I agree with that. Yeah, I agree with that. You know, so I want to. Okay, we have some questions. We should address some of the questions from the audience, shall we? Yeah. Otherwise, they'll be mad at us. We don't want them to be mad at us.
People don't get mad, they log out.
Yeah, but Mukul has a great sense of humor. He does. Love his sense of humor. Okay, so, you talked about, you know, doing work in different parts, different continents, Mukul. So the question is to you, is there any difference, just reading off here, in leadership style between the different regions, different continents, like Asia versus Europe versus US?
A huge difference. Huge difference. In fact, the less developed, let's put it like this, the first world country and the other countries, there's a huge difference in the way leaders lead. I personally find that in the other part of the world, there are higher levels of empathy displayed. There is a higher hunger for learning. They may not have the resources. They may not be able to give them the same amount of resources to learn and grow, but the hunger is very high. There are certain countries when we would release a workshop, it would fill up before you literally, when you clicked open and it was full. There were people waiting for it. So there are huge differences. I'm not saying they're good or bad. Probably they are tempered to that reality, but yes, the differences are there.
Yes. Oh, thank you for that. Because we're doing some work with youth nowadays, mentoring and all that stuff. We just realize, my God, we look around. Do you know how many youth mentoring initiatives are out there right now in Singapore? Do you know how many? Too many. Yep. Too many. They're spoiled for choices. Okay, and of course, a lot of them assign, but they won't even come. So the hunger, you ask the hunger question.
Yeah.
You ask the hunger question. It's an important question. Okay, let's go to the next one. Question or thought? Okay, support. Yeah.
Can I just speak to? Can I speak to the one further down?
Yes.
I think, is it BB that talked about communication? I think BB's raised a really important point. There was something about communication.
Oh, this is the chat. I'm in the wrong window. Sorry. Oh, BB, yes, okay.
Yeah, there was something about communication and the importance of communication. I think BB's absolutely right. You know, good leaders can communicate. And clearly that's an important part of it. Being able to convey and connect through communication is critical. Obviously critical at all times, but even more so during times of disruption.
Yes. That's one voice they need to hear is from your leaders, isn't it? Yeah. Very good. Okay, should we, okay. Pei Yun, do we want to address this one? In an increasingly polarized world, what could leaders do to collaborate with one another to ensure that everyone on this planet have adequate access to healthcare, proper nutrition, empathy, safety, address, you know, the global warming, environment issues, and sustainability issues? Wow, this is a big one. I have a simple answer. I have a simple answer to that. Have more women leaders.
Well, you know, I think this is the challenge that's faced by everybody. All the governments around the world and all the leaders are trying to figure this out and get their heads around and grapple with all this. I think the point here is, what can an individual do in terms of leadership? I think, and this is where, you know, I actually start to veer from leadership to influence. Because at an individual level, you know, certainly you can be a leader, but there are very often instances when you don't want to be a leader, but you want to influence, and you can influence, and you have your own circles and your own communities and your networks that you can influence, and that's important. So whether it's, you know, making decisions around, you know, use of technology or not use of technology, or anything to do with, conservation and sustainability and the choices that we make around there, that's a personal choice, but you can also influence people around you. And that's, I think, what you do at the individual level.
Yes, there's a second part to that question. Oh,
Yeah, if I may add.
Go ahead, please, Mukul. Yeah.
I may add. I wonder if you guys have heard of this organization called Happy People Helping People. This is an organization our company has been partnering with for several years now. One guy, and a very amazing guy, without any major resources, nothing. One guy saw a problem. Old uncles and aunties dragging around cardboard to try and eke out a living. And he decided he can't solve the problem, but he could help one person. And that laid the seed for that organization. And that's why we support it. So instead of asking ourselves, what's the global problem we are trying to solve, let's find the local problem and do what we can to solve it. Yeah. There will, of course, be some people who will have the resources, and they should not try to solve individual problems. They should try to create a system which addresses the root cause of individual problems. So if you have the resources, go that route. If you do not, each one save one. It's a very simple way forward. It makes life pleasant, not for everyone, but for some more people.
Yes. I mean, just to follow up on that, there's a second part to Pei-Yin's question that we missed. And I think it's quite important because it speaks to what you just talked about.
I'm not reading the question fully.
This is, let me read it. Technologically, we have enough. She talked about, what do leaders do to collaborate, right? Ensure everyone has adequate access to healthcare, education, blah, 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 nutrition. Technologically, we have enough technology advances and resources to support everyone on the planet, including food, right? Food security is a big topic now. Yeah, there's huge distribution challenges. And that's true also. We know that, for example, 40 to 50% of the food that's produced is wasted. Yeah. Right. In Singapore, either in the supply chain, foods, it rotted in the field or cannot deliver, or we waste food in Singapore, right? I think, because all the big buffet that we all go, the wedding, remember the wedding banquets?
Well, we used to do that. Can't do that
not anymore, not right. So that's what COVID did for us as well. Save some food. But what could individual do in terms of leadership? The reason I want to read this part, because I think this address goes to what you were talking about. I think each of us can do something.
That's right.
Leadership is not, for me, it's never about who you are or where you are or where in a hierarchy you sit. Nothing about that, right? How much money you have. It's about taking ownership, doing things that you can, so within your control, within your sphere of influence. Absolutely. And each of us can start, we can start something, right? And that's what we're all doing. We can start something. We can start, we can do something ourselves. Like one of the things that I've been doing for a while now is when I go to the public toilet, sorry, I'm sharing a secret here. I never share with anyone. I don't use the paper napkin anymore to dry my hand. Right? I just dry it on I use a dryer, or if they don't have that, and I just dry it on my shirt. It dries in 30 seconds. Why do I want to waste a piece of paper just to dry in my hand, which is going to go to some, garbage dump somewhere, waste dump somewhere, contribute to global warming, that kind of thing. So each of us, we don't, maybe we do less. We take our, we don't, right? We'll go grocery shopping. We take our own bags. Right? We don't use more plastic bags. Those kind of little things that we all can do. Everyone can do, right? Everyone has a choice to do that.
In fact, that's the reason why in our company, whatever work we do, 25% we ensure goes towards community outreach, towards strengthening the weaker sections of society. And we do that literally not with money, but with time we spend on training and creating awareness and the skills required for people to move forward. It's like, don't give them a fish, teach them how to fish. That approach.
Yes. I love that. Thank you.
MUKUL, that's a very enlightened approach, and yes. We need obviously more of that to take place.
Absolutely.
It's quite a rarity. Let me say that.
Also, Georgette, the people in my company have a lot of bad karma. We need to kind of do stuff to get rid of it.
Yes, but here's the thing: you realize that, so it's okay.
No, by talking tonight, you increase your good karma, MUKUL.
Yeah. My karma is perfect. Hello. Perfect already.
Okay, we have another question. I know we're a bit over time, but if people are okay to stay for another 5 to 10 minutes, yeah, because I think we have something going. Okay, this is from Jamie. As people look up to leaders for direction, they can feel this pressure to come across to their teams like they know exactly what they do all the time. How is it possible to show confidence, inspire the team when leaders don't always have the answers? Okay, I think we are kind of addressed that, but maybe you want to talk to that a bit, Georgette?
Yeah, look, I think it's important. Confidence is important, but I think it goes back to, this positive attitude and behavior, right? But at the same time, if you don't have the answer, admit you don't have the answer. It's okay. It doesn't mean that you're a bad leader. It just means you don't have the answer. And it means that you have to find somebody who can help give you the answer. There's no shame in admitting that. So I think it doesn't it doesn't reduce the confidence people have in you if you admit it and you're upfront about it and you ask for help. But yes, I can imagine that sometimes this whole sense of, if I can't solve everybody's problems, what kind of a leader am I? I must be a lousy leader. I think we have to get over ourselves with that. I think we have to be realistic, and I think certainly the teams that we lead, they understand the importance of transparency, telling it like it is, and just plain old honest truth. So that's really valuable during these difficult times.
Yeah. No, I think for me, if I may add to that, for me, this time really, again, just shows that, the days of command and control leadership are gone, are gone. I mean, as leaders, we talked about, being steward. I think we are designers of the enterprise. We're designers, and it's about us, and, we hopefully will provide a vision and the purpose, right, of the organization. But then we need to empower the people. We need to empower the people. Of course, we lead by example. We need to empower them, right? And invite them on this journey. Yeah.
And I think that's when you also need to reinforce the greater vision, the longer term vision, because that's when people sometimes lose sight of it, because they're only they're so focused on the near and now. So part of it is the confidence comes in being able to say there is a longer term plan, and that in itself gives some assurance.
I think most of the people who are being led are clearly aware that the leader does not have a halo around him and doesn't know the answers. What they are looking for is the confidence that when things go wrong, the leader will be standing with them. Yeah. And what the leader needs to know is that they do not need to know the answers. They need to have the confidence that whatever comes along the way, they will either find the way or make one.
Or that they have hired people along the way, or developed people along the way, and given them the opportunity so that some of them can provide those answers.
Yeah.
Okay. I think we do have one more question. See if we can address this one. I think this is the last question from the audience, from David. In my time in Asia, the past 20 years, I have to say that empathy and people development have been sadly lacking. The focus too often has been one-dimensional on results. Do you feel that the past 18 months have facilitated a real and sustainable shift in these two leadership competencies?
Okay, I'll go first. I'm going to agree with David. I think empathy, people development, creating, building the mentoring, sponsoring, clearing the way for staff, probably took a backseat. Right? Has it come to the fore? People are realizing the importance. I think it has. And I think that's a good thing. I guess my concern, my fear is that as things go back to normal, it will start to fade away again. I think it's on every one of us to make sure that it keeps front and center.
Yeah, well said. I think, my gosh, I think we addressed all the questions. My goodness. Okay, I'm gonna end this with kind of one quote that I want to, and I want you to comment on this. If you can comment on this, yeah. Okay, let's see. Okay, this is I don't know who said this. Leadership is a combination of being born in the right place, being handed the right opportunity with the character, and of course, I would add competency of the person and the right support systems. Do you agree with this statement? Born in the right place, handed the opportunity, having the character, and of course, the competency, the capability, and then of course, having the support system for the leader to succeed.
Well, I would say that if that person has the character, he will create the rest. And if the character is not there, then all the other things together, they may get him into a position, but whether he succeeds there or not is anyone's guess.
I'm going to agree with Mukul. I think that's absolutely right. I think what he does with all those traits and environment and team and everything else at the end of the day is it's going to be is what counts. And whether it's you know, following your North Star, you know, being purpose driven, all those things are equally important and must be thrown into the mix. But yes, to a large degree, I think what you've read out isn't incorrect. But I think you know, as always, everybody is going to subscribe to differences. And the diversity is what makes it interesting for everybody. So I think there are probably little snippets along the way that will bubble up, particularly during times of stress and disruption. And that's when true leadership really comes out.
Yes, we have this debate, you know, at AIM and other places as well. Is leadership, is it an inside-out process or is it an outside-in? And I, you know, based on this conversation, I must venture to say it's probably a combination.
Yeah,
I think it's probably a combination. But I think, you know, having an inner conviction, all that quality is very important. Right, that's what builds us. That's how we can create an environment. But also, the environment has a huge, huge impact, you know, on leadership, you know, leadership as well. So with that,
nature nurture
yes,
equation, right?
Yes, the yin and the yang. Yeah, those are the eternal, yeah, truth. Fantastic. If I don't see any more questions coming up. With that, and we're 10 minutes past midnight. No, 10 minutes past 9.
Oops. I think Yenlu froze.
Oh, did we lose him?
Well, you can share your last thoughts and
look forward to seeing you again. Okay.
No, you froze for a second there, Yenlu.
I did.
I were going to do a song and dance act between the two of us.
You did? Okay, but I missed that. I missed that. Can you do that again? Can you do that again?
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, can you stay on for a minute? Yeah, thank you.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye. Good night.
Everybody, thank you so much for
Thank
taking
you.
care
Good
of
night.
yourselves.
Yeah, thank you.
Stay safe. Bye-bye.